Okay, good morning, everyone. This is week 5 of the Housing Information Series, and we're talking with Ribhu Rampersad again this week. He's from Olympus Property Group, so thank you for being here, Ribhu.
Good to be here.
Okay, so let's just dive right in, if that's okay. If members decide to rent their property instead of selling it when they're posting out, what are some ways that they can educate themselves about being a landlord and whether or not they should hire a property manager?
Sure. So first off, in terms of education,
Yeah.
Ontario Landlord Tenant Board website
Okay.
has tons of great information. It gives you all the documents you need, all the forms you need, all the steps of the process. However, if you're posting out and leaving Belleville, especially if you're not originally from Belleville, I would highly recommend getting a property manager, one who knows the local tenant profile, they understand the different employers, they have a team in place to help maintain it so that when you do get posted, you can leave your property behind without having much worry.
Yeah, that's the last thing you want to have to deal with when you're posted like to another province or something. Is if something goes wrong with the property, who do you call to fix it?
Yeah.
I like that idea, hiring a property manager.
Yeah.
Financially, how can members best prepare themselves for renting out their property? Like, what are some of the costs associated with being a landlord? And, some things that maybe people might overlook or don't think to take into consideration when they do decide to rent.
For sure. So anytime we look at a property and do a deal analysis, and anybody feel free to reach out. I can share my spreadsheets and resources with anybody who wants it. Couple of things to take into consideration is one, your property management. Typically, that's around 6% of rent plus HST.
Okay.
And then what we like to do in all of our properties is allow for allowances for repairs and maintenance, typically around 5 to 6% again of gross rent.
Okay.
That kind of sits in that bank account for anything that goes wrong, so you don't need to pull from your monthly salary in order to do it if something does go wrong. And then thirdly, just allowing for about a 2% vacancy to account for tenant turnover or periods between tenants where you don't have rent coming in.
Okay, so would that be like 14% altogether that you kind of want to prepare for?
Correct. In addition to the normal, mortgage, utility expenses, those expenses are kind of like for peace of mind. So 6% goes out every month. Everything else just accrues in the bank account in order to help offset potential expenses down the line. Okay,
that makes sense. Okay, so I guess that kind of answers the next question. How can you calculate the amount of money that they should have set aside? So basically what you want to do is figure out your mortgage, insurance, and then add that extra 14% so that you know what you need to have set aside, kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. And that 5% repairs and maintenance is a good rule of thumb, which we found to work for us and other investors as well.
Okay.
And once you build up a little buffer in that bank account, let's say 5,000 is a number, then you can make the decision to start pulling extra money out every month because okay, my property is secured. We're set now if anything happens.
Okay, and that typically goes for when you're trying to find a property manager. You want to think, they're probably going to take 6%. About that amount of whatever the rent is going to be.
Yeah, for sure. And you know what? There will be cheaper property managers, more expensive ones. Just remember, you get what you pay for.
Yeah, that's true. So that's my next question. So what are some questions to ask property management companies when you're searching for the right provider?
Yeah, so a couple of questions you'd want to ask is, how long they've been managing properties or owning properties in the area. What type of tenant profile do they typically serve? What type of units they may typically serve. For example, this is a generalization, but somebody trying to fill a single family executive rental that you may be renting because you just moved out from this house versus a unit in a sixplex. You may be looking for a different person to ensure they have the right contacts and ways to get them. Okay. And then finally, what kind of tech systems they have in the back end. Today's day and age, you want to make sure they can do proper credit screening, background screening. Okay. Rent collection, all these things. All of those can be digitized now, and there's really good software for it. So you want to make sure your team has all that on their side. Okay, gotcha. So this is kind of a rhetorical question, I guess, but is it best to choose the cheapest option when choosing a property manager? And what are some things to consider when you're making that decision? No, definitely not. There are definitely cheaper options available out there.
Yeah.
You need to ask certain things. So, for example, you typically pay a property manager or a realtor if you go that route
Yeah.
for tenant placement. So, like one question would be, do you get paid up front or do you get paid when the tenant's actually in there? I know for us, we only get paid once the tenant's in there because it's incentivized the property management company to actually do their job.
Right.
Second thing would be are you taking monthly management fees while the unit's vacant? Again, that's one that some management companies do. I personally don't like it because it doesn't create an incentive. They're getting paid either way, so what
Yeah.
incentivizes them to ensure the unit's filled or maintained properly?
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Makes sense. If a member chooses to rent their property but not hire a property manager, what sorts of things should they prepare themselves for?
So lots of volume of applicants.
Okay.
So in this area, there's a huge demand for rentals.
Yes.
You need to take your time to sift through and really screen your tenants properly. Flip side of the landlord tenant board is it's very difficult and they're very backlogged just because they're still dealing with a backlog from COVID and whatever other reasons that exist. So you want to ensure you're picking the right tenants who will pay rent on time, who won't damage your property. So just taking time to sift through applications, making sure you're doing full due diligence in terms of employer checks, background checks, reference checks. We've had people completely try to defraud us, for example, fake employment letters and stuff. So just knowing the area, knowing the employers, like who pays what kind of thing, helps. For sure.
Okay.
So
gotcha.
take your time.
Take your time when you're choosing.
Yeah. But one more thing, red flag. Typically in Belleville, people are not offering like 8 to 12 months up front. There's a couple of people who might. Just beware. Sometimes that desperation is a red flag.
Okay, gotcha.
We've encountered that before.
Okay, good to know. So aside from figuring out what the mortgage on the house is and your insurance, are there any other things that you should take into consideration when we talked about figuring out how much it costs to hire a property manager, but should the base amount of rent that you're going to charge, should that just basically be the mortgage and your insurance, and then you add that extra amount to it? Is that what you want to do?
Yeah, that and then the property tax as well.
And the property tax.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then typically that's your total expense for that property, and you ideally want to, price your rent accordingly.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
And then just do some due diligence as well, like through Facebook Marketplace on MLS, see what other comparable units in the area are renting for.
Right.
And that will give you a good initial ballpark of what you should be pricing at.
Yeah, that's a good tip there. Okay, so since Ontario is a highly regulated province when it comes to rental housing, how can landlords and property owners ensure they're following the rules and guidelines to avoid running into legal issues with tenants?
Yeah, so I think having a good paralegal on your side is important.
Okay.
And that's assuming. So I guess I'll backtrack for a sec. So if you're working with a property manager who is versed in the Landlord Tenancy Act, stuff like that, odds are they'll know how to navigate at least the initial steps of the process.
Okay.
But if you do run into issues, even with a property management company, you'd want to have a good paralegal on your side who knows the different nuances of the forms. And essentially, they do this for a living, right? They're always at landlord hearings. They know what the different issues are. Errors on paperwork could cause you a couple months delay sometimes.
Okay.
So just having that power team behind you is going to be key.
Okay. What if someone wants to rent? Okay, so this is as if like I have a rental. What if somebody wants to rent my property, but share it with roommates? What do I need to know about them renting my property and sharing with roommates?
Yeah, so if they communicate that with you up front, I would recommend that you get everybody on the lease.
Okay.
And then vet everybody like as a collective application.
Okay.
Just to ensure everybody feels the same kind of accountability for the property.
Yeah.
Just making sure you have all the names there and treating it like just one single lease application.
Okay, gotcha. Does a rental agreement have to be 1 year in length, or is it possible to rent for shorter periods of time and still have it be that standard lease agreement?
Yeah, you can do any length of time.
Okay.
I'd say it's typically conventional to do 1 year.
Okay.
Sometimes we've done 2-3 years.
Mhm.
Just keep in mind that after that lease agreement is up in Ontario, it does roll by default into month to month.
Yeah,
So it doesn't really matter anyway. You can't really evict the tenants or get them out unless you have like cause like you're moving in.
yeah,
There's like rezoning of the property. There's a lot of things around that. So
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't really matter that much.
okay, okay. And then, I guess on top of that, oh, I just kind of lost what my train of thought. I'll get back to it because I
Sounds good.
can't remember what I was gonna ask, but it had something to do with that. Okay, if someone wants to rent their property for a shorter period of time, so like say 2 to 3 months or
Okay.
4 to 6 months, like, does that need to be stated in the lease? Like, how can they prepare themselves for, like, what if the tenant ends up wanting to stay longer than that 3 months, but they only want it rented for 3 months, say?
Unfortunately, the answer to that is once you're above 30 days, you are subject to landlord tenant board, landlord tenancy act. So I mean, this is again goes back to the point of due diligence, understanding the tenant that's moving in, why they're moving in. So
Yeah.
for example, there's seasonal workers who might come, will work in the county.
Yeah.
So odds are they're gonna move after 6 months.
Yeah.
There is not much you can do at the end of it, unless you're moving back in. If you're moving back into the property, that is one of the valid reasons
Okay.
to remove a tenant legally,
Okay,
with notice. But outside of that, it is tough. So it's just understanding your tenant is key.
okay.
Yeah.
Something to keep in mind
Something to
then,
keep in mind,
because I know
yeah.
we have a lot of members who come for short periods of time, or they come for a posting for IR where they only want to rent for say like 6 months, and
Yeah.
then they move into a rental, like a PMQ, for example, or they purchase a home.
Yeah.
But that's good for landlords to know that, if they get extended, they need that extra couple of months, they might need to
Yeah.
take that into consideration.
Yeah. For
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. I can't remember what my other question was going to be, but
Okay.
is there anything else that we should add with regards to becoming a landlord?
I think just the biggest thing is, there's this misconception, all tenants are evil, or vice versa, landlords are evil. And we've had really, really good experiences renting out the tenants here in Belleville and
Yeah.
Trenton. Taking our time to do due diligence.
Yeah.
And it's been a great experience. We've been able to build a portfolio with some great tenants.
Yeah.
And help people out. So definitely I would not be afraid of, the landlord tenant board. If you do the work up front, it's a great way to invest, keep your asset and grow some wealth.
It's all about due diligence, right?
Yes.
When it comes down to everything that we've been talking about so far in this entire series, all comes down to due diligence. So
Yeah, for sure.
okay, that's great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, and I'll forward you any questions that I get from people, and
Sounds good.
we'll be in touch.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.